everyone. I have hit streaming. I have hit recording just in case anything happens. Here we are, the Trophy Room / Bad Bit pre-show. Before all the craziness that is our reactions to the PlayStation 5 deep dive, the road to PlayStation as they call it, on their YouTube. Mark Cerny is about to drop a whole lot of knowledge on us. And
Mark or Tim?
Mark Cerny.
Not Tim Cerny, his brother? They're not trusting his brother on this one?
Not that son of a gun. No. He's not allowed here. So first and foremost, welcome everybody. We're just getting set up here. I want to make sure everything's working, that everything is live, and it looks like we are. So I'm going to get the link out here. I'm going to start promoting it on various social medias. But in the meantime, Kyle.
Yes.
Where's your hype? Where's your concern? Where are you?
Sure. My hype is really, really high right now. We've been waiting for a long time for more information, and it's nice to see that they're putting on a nice long video for us. A good, it's what, 52 minutes and some change.
Something
this
like
video.
that. Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So my hype's pretty high. We're finally going to hear more about it. I expect to hear a lot about backwards compatibility. I expect to hear a little bit more about the loading times, and hopefully they talk about, well, hopefully we talked about this briefly before.
Yeah. I
want to see the damn box. So hopefully we get to see what the PS5 looks like. And is it the pizza warmer with the little slice in the, is the prototype really the actual thing? Who knows?
I don't know yet.
But I really so badly want to see what it looks like. That is my biggest takeaway. If we get some game reveals, great.
Right.
But I think for me is I want to leave knowing what is going to be on my shelf later this year.
Okay. For me right now, I'm trying to find the link to this video.
Go to YouTube.
Okay, wait, I think I got it. I'm just freaking
That's
out
where
for
I am.
nothing. Yeah.
Are you sure we're live?
Yeah. Yes, I am. Oh wait, but we are unlisted. How do I get it to public?
Because I'm clicking on the channel and it doesn't have you live.
I got it. It's because I set it to unlisted. That's what I did.
Yeah. Okay.
So now everything should be pretty good. And again, this is the pre-show. Things are supposed to get all wacky and crazy. So here we go. Yep. Everything's up. Fantastic. Kyle, if you could tweet this out on your social media, I'll tweet it out.
Yes, sir.
On mine. Everybody who's coming in, who's joining us, hey, hi, how are you? This is our live stream. It's a little wacky and crazy. Don't worry, we're going to edit it down. It's going to look really beautiful afterwards. But with all that said, with all that out of the way, Kyle, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little under the weather. Definitely don't think it is the crazy virus that is going on.
Okay.
I think it's just a cold, headache, and a cough. But
yeah, you'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be okay. And you gotta, just work through it. It's not like I have anywhere else to be.
Yeah.
So if I was going to get sick with the nasty cold, now is the time to get sick.
Okay.
It's not like I have to worry about missing work.
That is also true. Same here.
Yeah.
How are you doing? How are you holding up so far? Other than like being a little sick, being a little under weather. How's it going for you?
Doing the best I can. Trying to play as much as I can, game wise.
Okay.
Now that we got some time. But I'm doing okay.
Dude, I've played too many freaking games, and I'm still bored. I've been playing Civilization Revolution on PlayStation Now, and I'm just like, I miss Civ Rev, man. They need to make a sequel, but now they got the real deal here, so I don't know. The PlayStation 5.
Oh, I'm a big dum-dum.
Yeah.
I was trying to see if you were live on Twitch.
No,
and I was like, that's why it's not showing up. Okay.
No, we're live on YouTube.
We're good. We're good.
Yeah,
I was about to say, Joe, we're not live still.
Something has gone wrong. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So here we are. We're live. Gosh, it's It's been a crazy past 15 minutes. What's up, Raid Power? What's up? What's going on? Thank you for joining us. Again, we're just getting started. We're just warming up here. We got 5 minutes until the reveal, 56 minutes to go. 52 minutes, they said, I believe, was their official number. 52 minutes of this reveal. Kyle, before we start the show, or actually, you know what? You know what, gang? I'm gonna have an official intro. Okay, Kyle.
Oh, hit us with it.
Buckle in. Let's do this. Because you know what? I'm going to cut the video here, and it's going to be great when we put it to VOD. So everyone, thank you for coming in. See Raid Power. I see Kevin Butler. Thank you. I know this is a little bit of a garbage truck on fire, but wait for it. Kyle, 3, 2, 1. Wait no longer. Greatness has arrived. Welcome to the Trophy Room, a PlayStation podcast made by the players for the players. I am your host, Joseph. Alongside me, the greatest co-host whoever will be, Mr. Kyle Stevenson. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Doing well.
Great. We're surviving right here, right now. If you're listening to the Trophy Room RSS feed, you might be going to yourself, Joe, the show's a little early. Well, this is actually a bonus show. This is us reacting live to the road to the PlayStation 5. This is the first video that Sony's coming out with. Mark Cerny's going to break down the tech to the PlayStation 5 behind it all. Kyle, before we see Mark Cerny in all of his beautifulness, where are your expectations? What do you think we're going to see?
Knack 3, Knack 4, Knack 5. No. It's going to be a lot about what will make this system work, this console work. So I imagine big chunk of backwards compatibility talk.
Okay.
Sure, talk more about the load times. The teraflops, if you will, throw around some of these buzzwords, but also I want to see if they're going to have anything
substantial,
but anything extra from what we are already expecting.
Okay.
What will the PS5 do that is special for PS5? It's not just whatever other console can do.
Okay. To me, from what I've been seeing, where my head's at, is that PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, they have a lot in common, but it does seem like the PlayStation 5 is going to be less powerful. And so my question walking in on this isn't like, oh, is PlayStation in danger because they don't have enough teraflops? My question is, where's the price going to be? Where's the messaging going to be? What's Sony's narrative? We're seeing Microsoft's. So, what is the thing that Sony is trying to build for them? And I think that's the thing that's going to be really telling. And what price the Xbox Series X is. Because rumor has it, it is a lot. It does cost significantly more to produce than the PlayStation 5. So we know that it's a bigger chip inside of that bad boy. We know it can do all sorts of things. So what's that going to mean price-wise? I don't know. Now, I think we're going to see a very dry conference. I don't think we're going to see too many games. I think you said right before the show, Bluepoint had a tweet out, right?
Yeah, the technical director tweeted out with the quote tweet to this presentation. You don't want to miss this because I won't, or something along those lines. So, are we going to see what Bluepoint's up? Are we going to see more than one game that is a PS5 game, not a Spider-Man running on PS5 hardware?
Okay. Now, because we did see a lot of that in the the Xbox reveal, where it was a lot of older titles. I know we've seen Halo Infinite, I think, once, but we saw State of Decay's loading times being cut in half. That game had really bad load times. To see it cut so significantly, awesome. But yeah, I think we're going to see Spider-Man's load time. I think it's going to be a lot of what Mark Cerny showed in closed doors. That's where I'm kind of at right now.
Yeah.
I do think, and I want to get to some of the comments here before we start. Robbie Bobby Miller says, Warframe! Robbie Bobby Miller, I'm right there with you. Warframe looks like a crazy cool game, okay? I'm right there. I'm just...
It's been kicking her for such a long time. Dude, kudos to that studio.
Absolutely. Luke Laura saying... Oh,
we got a 2-minute countdown.
Oh, this is just a YouTube premiere. Everybody? God, that's fucking loud.
Oh, I should probably put the audio on for this.
God, that is crazy loud. Let me know how the volume is in the chat. I don't have a crazy mixer, so it is what it is. Again, RSS feed people. Sorry if I'm murdering your ears right now. You only got a minute to go. But the cool thing is, in the description, if you're watching this in a VOD, let me just mute this for a second. This is unnecessary. That's unnecessary amount of noise you're throwing at me, YouTube.
They're saying way too loud.
Way too loud. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that was murdering my ears as well. So we'll fix that. Thank you. Yeah. So again, if you're watching VOD, if you're watching the trophy room on the RSS feed, note in the description we're going to be cutting ahead to several parts. So if you want to just skip to whatever it is you want to see, link in the description, whether it is again on VOD or on the RSS feed. Mm-hmm. We usually don't fill the RSS feed up with a lot of bonus content because I feel like that floods the RSS feed and it kind of just dilutes what we're trying to give you. But when it's big stuff like this and we got 32 seconds to go until we see the PlayStation 5, it matters. So
for sure.
Yeah. Also, with that said, I may very slight have to leave towards the end of the stream, but that's where Kyle's gonna take it over. Yeah. So Kyle.
But before you go, or if you have to go, chat. Is it still too loud? Are we good?
Oh, I muted it right now. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi. Unfortunately, we had to cancel the talk that we had planned for GDC. But we do have some super exciting news about PS Vita.
What a weird way to start.
And who better to bring that to you than the one and only Mark Cerny. Without further ado, over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Jim.
That was such a weird and awkward intro.
There will be
it had
lots
to be
of
done,
chances
right?
later on this year to look at the PlayStation 5 games. Today, I want to talk a bit about our goals for the PlayStation 5 hardware and how they influenced development of the console.
To him.
I think you all know I'm a big believer in console
impersonation
generations.
of him.
Once every 5 or 6 or 7 years, a console arrives with substantially new capabilities. Okay. There's a lot of learning by the game developers, hopefully not too overwhelming.
Again,
and soon there's games that could never have been
listen,
created
sorry,
before.
It's weird.
Now, it used to be that as a console designer, you'd somehow intuit what would be the best set of capabilities for the new console, and then build it in complete secrecy. For the PlayStation consoles, that period lasted through PlayStation 3, a powerful and groundbreaking console, but also one that caused quite a lot of heartache, as it was initially difficult to develop games for. So, starting with PlayStation 4, we've taken a different approach, roughly centered around 3 principles. The first of these is listening to the developers, which is to say that a lot of what we put into a console derives directly from the needs and aspirations of the game creators. We definitely do have some ideas of our own, but at the core of our philosophy for designing consoles is that game players are here for the fantastic games, which is to say that game creators matter. Anything we can do to make life easier for the game creators or help them realize their dreams,
okay, that guy just moved. All right,
so about once every 2 years, I take a tour of the industry. I go to the various developers and publishers and discuss how they're doing with the current consoles and what they'd like to see in future consoles.
That next time.
This requires weeks on the road as reaching the bulk of the game creators involves talking to well over 100 people at something like 24 publishers and developers.
Cool.
And it is incredibly valuable. By the way, the feature most requested by the developers, that was an SSD, which we were very happy to put in the hardware, but a lot of problem solving was required. I'll be doing a deep dive on the SSD and surrounding systems later on in this talk.
And then like a very, very...
It's also key to make a generational leap while keeping the console sufficiently familiar to game developers. I think about this in terms of balancing evolution and revolution.
person.
Now, with PlayStation 1, 2, and 3, the target was a revolution each time with a brand new feature set. That was great in many ways, but time for the developers to get up and running got longer with each console. In the past, I've called this time to triangle. Here's what I had for those 3 consoles. To be clear, I'm not talking about time to make a game. Developers will be ambitious, and it may take them 6 years or so to realize their vision. What I'm talking about is that dead time before graphics and other aspects of game development are up and running, and
this is a GDC conference.
On the other hand, if we're trying to reduce that dead time to 0, that means the hardware architecture can't change at all.
More so than consumers.
We need to judge for each feature what value it adds and whether it's worth the increase in developer time needed to support it. So with PlayStation 4, we were able to strike a pretty good balance between performance and familiarity. We got required learning back to PlayStation 1 levels. With PS5, the GPU was definitely the area we felt the most tension between adding new features and keeping a familiar programming model. Ultimately, I think we've ended up with something under a month of getting up to speed. That feels like we're striking about the right balance. I'll go into a bit more detail later today about our philosophy with the GPU and the specific feature set that resulted from it.
Man, if you look
it's
at the
also
chat
very
on
important for
PlayStation
us
right now,
as the hardware team to find new dreams, by which I mean something other than CPU performance, GPU performance, and the amount of RAM. The increase in graphics performance over the past 2 decades has been astonishing, but there are other areas in which we can innovate and provide significant value to the game creators, and through them, the players. That's why the SSD was very much on our list of directions to explore, regardless of what came out of the conversations with game developers and publishers. The biggest feature in this category is the custom engine for audio. That's today's final topic. The push for vastly improved audio, and in particular 3D audio, isn't something that came out of the developer meetings. It's much more the case that we had a dream of what might be possible 5 years from now, and then worked out a number of steps we could take to set us on that path. So here again are the 3 principles, the first being enabling the desires of developers to drive the hardware design. To me, the SSD really is the key to the next generation. It's a game changer. And it was the #1 ask from developers for PlayStation 5. As in, we know it's probably impossible, but can you put an SSD
Fiona, you talking about the turtle?
That was a discussion we were also having internally.
Is that what you're talking about, Fiona?
It was clear that the presence of a hard drive in every PlayStation 4 was having a positive impact.
I like turtles.
A lot of things that would simply have been impossible at Blu-ray disc speeds were now possible.
Okay.
At the same time, though, in 2015
I was going
and
for
2016, when we were having these conversations,
the Dana
developers
Carvey
were already banging up
movie
against
where
the
he's
limits
like
of the hard drive.
the-
And a
where he
lot
has
of
a bunch
developer
of
time was
disguises,
being spent
and one of his
designing
disguises is a
slow
turtle. He
load
goes,
speeds.
turtle.
I want to focus in
Also,
on
please
just
understand, the
one
people in the
number,
crowd are
which is how long
employees.
it takes to load a
Again,
gigabyte
they even
of data
stated
from
it
a hard
before
drive.
the show
The
started.
difficulty being
Sorry,
that hard
we
drives
wanted
are
to
neither
do this in
particularly
a crowd
fast nor
because
flexible.
of recent events. Here
If
we
all your data is in one
here it
block,
is.
which is frankly not very likely,
PS4.
you can load 50 to 100 megabytes a second, depending on where the data is located on the hard drive. Let's assume it's on the outer edge, which means loading a gigabyte takes 10 seconds. If you compress your game packages, you can fit more data on the Blu-ray disc and also effectively boost your hard drive read speed by the compression ratio.
Okay.
We support
Fiona, you're on
Z-lib
fire
decompression
today.
on
Can I
PlayStation
just say
4
that right now?
gets you something like 50% more data on the disc and 50% higher effective read speed. Unfortunately, though, it's highly likely that your data is scattered around in various files on the hard drive, as well as sourced from multiple locations within those files. So lots of seeks are needed at 2 to 50-ish
awesome
milliseconds
information.
each. My
This is
rule
the
of
information
thumb
I
is that
want.
the hard drive is spending 2/3 of its time seeking, and only 1/3 of its time
This
actually
is the
loading
information you
data.
wanted?
Yeah, this
Putting
is,
all of that together,
this is exactly
a
what I
gigabyte is
expected,
very
guys.
roughly 20 seconds to load. per month.
Oh yeah, expected. Yeah, so wanted
Now,
or
a
this is a different
gigabyte
story?
is
I wanted
not
this.
much data.
He's-
Games
he's
are using
talking to
5
you
or 6
about
gigabytes of RAM
this
on
is what the-
PlayStation 4,
the
so
hardware,
boot times and load
does.
times can get pretty
I
brutal.
want the in-depth.
Or to put
like,
that differently,
here's how the hard
as a
drive
player,
works.
you wait
Like
for
you
the
just
game
said,
to
everything's
boot,
going to be faster.
wait
'cause
for the
it's less
game to
seeking,
load,
and
wait for
your
the
file
level to
size is
reload
gonna
every
be
time you
smaller
die,
because,
and you wait for
again,
what is
you're putting less
euphemistically
information
called
on that
fast
solid-state
travel.
drive.
And
So-
all of that leads to the dream.
This is awesome.
What if we could have not just an SSD, but a blindingly fast SSD? If we could load 5 gigabytes a second from it, what would change? Now, SSDs are completely different from hard drives. They don't have seeks as such. If you have a 5 gigabyte a second SSD, you can read data from 1,000 different locations in that second, pretty much at speed. As for time to load a gigabyte, this is next gen we're talking about, so memory is bigger. Instead, we should be asking how long to load 2 gigabytes. And the answer is about 1/4 of a second. I mean, that's amazing. We're talking 2 orders of magnitude, meaning very roughly 100 times faster. Which means at 5 gigabytes a second for the SSD, the potential is that the game boots in a second. There are no load screens. The game just fades down while loading a half dozen gigabytes and fades back up again. Same for a reload. You're immediately back in the action after you die. And fast travel becomes so fast it's blink and you miss it. As game creators, we go from trying to distract the player from how long fast travel is taking,
they showing like a
those
Windows
Spider-Man
98
subway
screensaver
rides,
right now?
to being so blindingly fast that you might even have to slow
So
that
he's
transition
talking
down.
about how fast his hard drive
Pretty
is.
cool,
And
right?
it's loading
But
in a
for
graphic,
me, this is not
and
the
it
primary
looks like,
reason to change from
we're
a
going
hard
into,
drive
like,
to an SSD.
light speed,
The
but,
primary reason for an
no, we're about to
ultra-fast
hit plant
SSD
speed.
is that it gives the game designer
It's
freedom.
weird.
Or to put that differently,
Mark
with
certainly
a
has
hard
code,
drive,
I
the
think.
20 seconds that
pretty
it
sure.
takes to load a gigabyte can sabotage the game that
say
the
he's
developer
killed?
is trying to create.
Yeah.
I think almost
Maybe
all
the
of us in the
vibe.
room have experienced this, maybe in different ways. Say we're making an
I
adventure
have
game, and we have
thoughts
two
on this,
rich
'cause y'all
environments where
are
we
getting
each want enough textures and
No.
models to
I'm
fill
playing
them
it
out.
up. I think
Which you
this
can
is-
do as
this is
long
what
as
I
you have a
expected
long
as well.
staircase or elevator ride or a windy corridor where you can ditch the old assets and then take 30 seconds or so to load the new assets. Having a 30-second elevator ride is a little extreme. More realistically, we'd probably chop the world into a number of smaller pieces and then do some calculations with sight lines and run speeds like we did for Haven City when we were making Jack 2. The game is 20 years old, but not much has changed since then. All those twisty passages are there for
I
a
will
reason.
say,
There's a whole
long in the
subset
tooth
of level design
for
dedicated to
the
this sort of work.
explanation
But
of the
still,
hard drive.
it's a
I
giant
feel like
distraction for a
Microsoft
team
didn't
that
do
just
enough
wants to
explanation
make
on how
their
the hard
game.
drive works. PlayStation's
So
just
when I
like,
talked about
yo,
the
look at this
dream of an
fucking
SSD,
drive.
part of the reason for
Let's
that
break
5
down
gigabyte a
each
second
little
target
bit.
was to eliminate loads. But also part of the reason for that target was streaming. As in, what if the SSD is so fast that
Listen, I
as
know
the
this is
player
riveting
is
content,
turning
y'all.
around, it's possible to load textures for everything behind the player in that split second. If you
So
figure that
this is the
it
same
takes
tech
half
that
a second
Xbox,
to turn, that's
Series
4
X has.
gigabytes of compressed data you can load.
The
That sounds
variable,
about right for
shading
next gen.
or variable,
Anyway,
I think it's
back
shading
to
or
the
something
hard
like
drive.
that.
Another
This is what he's
strategy
talking
for
about.
increasing effective read speed is to make big sequential chunks of data. For example, we might group all the data together for each city block.
Tim Wolf, you did not
That
miss
removes
much.
most of the
This
seeks,
is a
and the streaming gets
weird
faster.
production
But there's a
they're putting on.
downside too,
They
which is
are
that
talking for
frequently
10
used
minutes
data
about
is
this hard
included
drive.
in many chunks and therefore
feel
is
like
on the
just a
hard
little bit
drive
too much.
many, many times.
Just a tad.
Marvel's Spider-Man uses this strategy, and though it works very well for increasing the streaming speed, there's a massive duplication as a result. Some of the objects like mailboxes or news racks are on the hard drive 400 times. What I'm describing here are things that cramp a creative director's style. Either level design gets a little bit boring in places, or the data is duplicated so many times that it no longer fits on the Blu-ray disc. And you end up with hard limits on the player's run speed or driving speed. The player can't go faster than the load speed from the hard drive. And finally, I'm sure many of you have noticed that after a patch download, a PlayStation 4 will sometimes take a long time
Yes.
to install the patch. That's because when just part of a file has been changed, the
Remember
new
what I
data
said
can be
yesterday?
downloaded
Keep your
pretty
expectations
quickly.
extremely
But before
low.
the
It's gonna
game
be
boots
weird.
up,
It's gonna
a
be,
brand new file has to
you
be
know,
constructed that includes the changed portion.
it's gonna be a
Otherwise,
lot.
every change would add a seek
And like
or two.
everybody's like, you're gonna,
Even so,
we're
you
gonna
can
see,
occasionally see
we're gonna
this
see,
happening on
you
game
know,
titles. They start
Halo
to pitch
here.
once
It's
they
like,
get patched.
the expectations are
With
wild.
an SSD,
this is
though,
GDC.
no seeks. So
These are
no need to make
developers
brand new
talking
files
to
with the changes
developers.
incorporated into
This
them,
is what
which
it's about,
means
y'all.
no
So I don't know what
installs
you
as
wanted
you
here.
know them today.
This is not E3. This is not a state.
There's
of play.
yet one more benefit, which is that system memory
Get the
can be used
expectations
much
right.
more efficiently.
I really,
On
I don't get it.
PlayStation 4,
Anyway,
game data on
now
the
we're
hard
talking about
drive
RAM.
feels very distant and difficult to use. By the time you realize you
I'm not
need a
frustrated,
piece
you're
of data,
frustrated.
it's much too late to go out and load it. So system memory has to contain all of the data that could be used in the next 30 seconds or so of gameplay. That means a lot of the 8 gigabytes of system memory is idle. It's just waiting there to be potentially used. On PlayStation 5, though, the SSD is very close to being like more RAM. Typically, it's fast enough that when you realize you need a piece of data, you can just load it from the SSD and use it. There's no need to have lots of data parked in system memory waiting to potentially be used. A different way of saying that is that most of RAM is working on the game's behalf. This is one of the reasons that 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 feels right for PlayStation 5. The presence of the SSD reduces the need for a massive intergenerational increase in size. So back to the dream of the SSD. Here's the set of targets.
We're seeing screensavers,
Boot the game in a second. No load screens. Design freedom, meaning no twisty passages or long corridors. More game on the disk and more game on the SSD. And finally, those patch
I'm all about no long patch installs.
The reality, though, is that the SSD is just one piece of the puzzle. There's a lot of places where bottlenecks can occur in between the SSD and the game code that uses the data. You can see this on PlayStation 4. If I use an SSD with 10 times the speed of a standard hard drive, I probably see only double the loading speed, if that. For PlayStation 5, our goal was not just that the SSD itself be 100 times faster. It was that game loads and streaming would be 100 times faster. So every single potential bottleneck needed to be addressed. And there are a lot of them. Let's look at check-in and what happens when its overhead gets 100 times larger. Conceptually, check-in is a pretty simple process. Data is loaded into system memory from the hard drive or SSD. It's examined. A few values are tweaked to check it in, and then it's moved to its final location. At the SSD speeds we're talking about, that last part, moving the data, meaning copying it from one location to another, takes roughly an entire next-gen CPU core. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. If all the overheads get 100 times larger, that will cripple the frame rate as soon as the player moves, and that massive stream of data
and developers,
starts
and then
coming
they
off
had the Austin Evans.
So to solve all of that, we built a lot of custom hardware, namely a custom flash controller and a number of custom units in our main chip.
Is that
the flash controller in the SSD was designed for smooth and bottleneck-free operation, but also with games in mind. For example, there are 6 levels of priority when reading from the SSD. Priority is very important. You can imagine the player heading into some new location in the world and the game requesting a few gigabytes of textures. And while those textures are being loaded, an enemy is shot and has to speak a few dying words. Having multiple priority levels lets the audio for those dying words get loaded
benefit from today.
What's that?
On one side, that flash controller connects to actual flash drives that supply the storage.
With Barack Obama,
and he had like bandwidth target of 5 gigabytes a second. We ended up with a 12-channel interface.
He'd be the one that like to curse and stuff. And take what Barack I feel like Mark needs a hype man, and he needs. He needs to have somebody explain it to us, big dum-dums,
for an SSD
in a way that is exciting and hip.
The key question for us was, is that enough?
Let's be real.
I mean, it's tempting to add more, but Flash certainly doesn't come cheap, and we have a responsibility to our gaming audience to be cost-effective with regards to what
But that's the thing, he's a genius.
Incredible, yeah.
Ultimately, we resolved this question by looking at the play patterns of a broad range of gamers. We examined the specific games that they were playing over the course of a weekend or a week or a month, and whether that set of games would fit properly on the SSD. We were able to establish that the friction caused by reinstalls or re-downloads would be quite low, and so we locked in on that 825 gigabyte size, while also preparing multiple strategies so that those who want more storage can add it. I'll go through the details in a moment.
Okay.
So
back to the flash controller.
825
on the other
gigs
side,
is
it
the
connects
SSD?
to our main custom chip via 4 lanes of Gen 4 PCIe.
825 gigs
And
is the
inside
SSD in the
main custom chip is
PS5?
a pretty hefty unit dedicated to
That's
storage.
what it says.
Before we talk about what that does, let's talk compression.
That's 1 terabyte.
Well, yeah,
PlayStation
but
4
like
used zlib
for
as its
game
compression
downloads, that is
we
what
decided
would be
to use it
available,
again on
825.
PlayStation 5, but on my 2017 tour of developers, I learned about a new format called Kraken from Rad Game Tools. It's like zlib's smarter cousin. Simple, similar types of algorithms, but about 10% better compression, which is pretty big. That means 10% more game on the UHD Blu-ray disc or on the SSD. Kraken had only been out for a year, but it was already becoming a de facto industry standard. Half of the teams I talked to were either using it or getting ready to evaluate it. So we hustled and built a custom decompressor into the I/O unit, one capable of handling over 5 gigabytes of Kraken format input data a second. After decompression, that typically becomes 8 or 9 gigabytes. But the unit itself is capable of outputting as much as 22 gigabytes a second if the data happens to compress particularly
I do see
well.
this too.
By the way, in terms of performance, that custom decompressor equates to 9 of our Zen 2 cores. That's what it would take to decompress the Kraken stream with a conventional CPU. There's a lot more in the custom I/O unit, including a dedicated DMA controller.
Do love
the game can direct exactly where it
Mark
wants to send the data coming off of the SSD.
You can tell his passion.
This equates to another Zen 2 core or 2 in terms of its copy performance. Its primary purpose is
on
to
his face, like he's smiling, he's having a great time.
There's 2 dedicated I/O coprocessors and a large RAM pool. These aren't Zen 2 cores. They're there principally to direct the variety of custom hardware around them. One of the coprocessors is dedicated to SSD I/O. This lets us bypass traditional file I/O and its bottlenecks when reading from the SSD. The other is responsible for memory mapping, which I know doesn't sound like anything related to the SSD, but a lot of developers map and remap memory as part of file I/O, and this too can become a bottleneck.
Okay,
There are
I might have missed something, but what is the I/O unit?
Coherency comes up a lot in places. Probably the biggest coherency issue is stale data in the GPU caches.
Image and optical?
Flushing all of the GPU caches whenever the SSD is read is
he's
an
talking about right here,
unattractive
right?
option.
Custom flash
really
memory is going through all the I/O.
We've
So he's
implemented
talking about
a gentler
the RAM
way
right
of
now
doing things,
into the system
where
memory.
the coherency engines inform the GPU of the overwritten address
You should be
ranges,
paying
and
attention.
custom
I tried my
scrubbers in
best, y'all.
several
You
dozen
saw it. I
GPU
saw
caches to pinpoint eviction.
Input output,
just
thank
those
you.
address ranges. The best thing is, as a game developer, when you read from the SSD,
You're like, yeah, just look at the map, Kyle.
you don't
Just look at the
need to
diagram,
know if the
Kyle. What are
data
you
is
doing?
compressed. You just indicate what data you'd like to read from your original uncompressed
I know what he's
file,
talking about, I
and where
just
you'd
can't
like to put
explain
it. And the whole process of loading it happens
input
in
it
this
out.
You were
Thank
literally
and
just
it's
saying the
very
things that I can already read.
Back to the dream. Thanks to
Thank you.
all
You know
of that
what?
surrounding
Let
hardware,
us refer
our
to
5.5
Sergeant
gigabytes a
Bones
second
back.
really should translate
will
into
know.
something
Damn.
like
The I/O
100
is
times faster I/O than PS4, and allow the dream of no load screens and super fast streaming.
5.5 gigs a
reality.
second. That's
Having
that's a
said
lot.
that, expandability
actually
of our
a shit ton.
SSD is going to be quite important. Flash is costly, and you may very well want to add storage to whatever we put in the console.
This is proprietary. That's
Now, the kind of storage you need depends on how you're going to use it. If you have an extensive PlayStation 4 library and you'd like to take advantage of backwards compatibility to play those games on PlayStation 5, then a large external hard drive is ideal. You can leave your games on the hard drive and play them directly from there, thus saving the pricier SSD storage for your PlayStation 5 titles, or you can copy your active PlayStation 4 titles to the SSD. If your purpose in adding more storage is to play PlayStation 5 titles, though, ideally you would add to your SSD storage. We will be supporting certain M2 SSDs. These are internal drives that you can get on the open market and install in a bay in the PlayStation 5.
Wow.
As for which ones we support, and
So not
when,
proprietary.
I'll get to that.
Not proprietary.
They connect through the
Not
custom I/O unit, just like our SSD does. So they can take full advantage of the decompression, I/O coprocessors, and
It is a
all the
different
other
slot,
features I was
though,
talking
because
about.
it's a different type of SSD.
Here's the catch, though.
But it's not proprietary.
That commercial drive
So you
has
could
to
go,
be at least as fast as ours. Games that rely on the speed of our SSD need to
this
work
is more Game
flawlessly
Forte.
with any M2.
No one's going to say
When I
you're
gave
arguing
the
it.
Wired
But that
interview
is
last
actually
year,
huge
I said that
information.
PlayStation 5 SSD
So whereas the
was
Xbox
faster
Series
than
X is
anything available on
proprietary,
PC. At the time, commercial
PlayStation
M2
5
drives
is you
used
could go out there,
PCIe
you
3.0,
can,
and
go to
4
the open
lanes of
market,
that
they
cap
said.
out at 3.5 gigabytes a second. In other words, no PCIe 3.0 drive can hit the required spec.
And he's
M2
explaining as
drives
to
with
why that's not
PCIe
the case.
4.0 are now out in the market. We're getting samples and seeing 4 or 5 gigabytes a second from them. By year's end, I expect there will be drives that saturate 4.0 and support 7 gigabytes a second. Having said that, we are comparing apples and oranges, though, because that commercial M2 drive will have its own architecture, its own flash controller, and so on. For example, the NVMe specification lays out a priority scheme for requests that the M2 drives can use.
God damn it,
And that scheme is pretty nice, but it only has 2 true priority levels. Our drive supports 6. We can hook up a drive with only 2 priority levels, definitely, but our custom
Luke
I/O
Lawler
unit
says,
has to
"Hi, Gaming
arbitrate the
Forte.
extra priority,
Welcome to the Trophy
rather
Room,
than
a
the
hotel
M2
and
drive's
spa
flash controller.
where we help
And so the
you
M2
relax
drive needs a
and rest
little
with
extra speed to
PlayStation
take care of
branded
issues arising from a
ASMR.
different approach.
That's
That
what we
commercial
specialize
drive
in.
also needs to physically fit inside of the bay we created in PlayStation 5 for M2 drives. Unlike internal hard drives, there's unfortunately no standard for the height of an M2 drive, and some M2 drives have giant heat sinks. In fact, some of them even have their own fans. Right now, we're getting M2 drive samples and benchmarking them in various ways. When games hit beta as they get ready for the PlayStation 5 launch
say no
year-end,
internal?
we'll also be doing some compatibility testing to make sure that
compatibility,
the
it's all
architecture of
external drives.
particular M2 drives isn't too foreign for the games to handle. Once we've
could've
done
just
that
said that, Mark.
compatibility testing, we should be able to start letting you know
could break
which
5 minutes
drives will
down into
physically
10
fit
seconds.
and which drive samples have benchmarked appropriately high in our testing. It would be great if that happened by launch, but it's likely to be a bit
my
past
reaction?
it. So please hold off
Yeah, I'm like, I'd
on
rather
getting
just
that
touch
M2
my
drive
face, get this
until
thing,
you hear
and-
from us. Okay, back to
Oh,
our
we're back to the
principles.
principles. Here we go.
Balancing evolution
One
and
down.
revolution is the second of them.
got
This was
two
definitely
down.
a recurring
Okay.
theme
Thank God.
with the GPU.
Like, we only got 1 down?
We need new GPU features and capabilities.
Okay, good talk
If we
about
only
GPU.
have more performance, it's not really a new generation of console. Of course, many of these capabilities result in more performance. That's part of why a PlayStation 5 teraflop is more powerful than a PlayStation 4 teraflop. But we aren't just looking for performance. We also need the ability to do something with the GPU that could not have been done before.
So it's going to be less
And
teraflops,
we
but
need
they're more
higher
powerful
performance per watt.
teraflops. You get that,
Every
Kyle?
time we double the performance of some
Oh,
GPU
sure.
unit,
I don't even know it.
we don't
I don't
want
even
to
know what a
Sergeant Bones,
teraflop is.
tell me what a
power
fucking
consumed.
teraflop is. Every time I read the definition, I feel
But
like
at the same time, we have to make
I'm
sure the
losing my
GPU
brain
can
here.
run
It's
PS4
pretty much just
games,
affecting the resolution.
and we have to ensure
Every
that the
time I just
architecture is easy
hear the
for
word flop, I
developers
think
to
of
adopt.
like
Now,
Major League Soccer
backwards
players or
compatibility
in
was
FIFA
handled
where they just
masterfully
flop
by
when they're
AMD. They
pushed over
treated
by
it
a
as
finger.
a key need throughout the design process. As our solution to adding new features without blindsiding developers, we made sure that if there were new significant features, it would be optional to use them. The GPU supports ray tracing, but you don't have to use ray tracing to make your game. The GPU supports primitive shaders, but you can release your first game on PlayStation 5 without making any use of them. Before I get
like
into the
horsepower,
capabilities of the GPU, I'd like to make clear 2 points that can be quite confusing. First, we have a custom AMD GPU based on their RDNA 2 technology. What does that
Everybody
mean?
now can shut up
AMD is
about
continuously
what it is.
improving
It's
and
RDNA
revising
2.
their tech.
It's going to be
For
very
RDNA
fast.
2, their goals were, roughly speaking,
Christ.
to reduce power consumption by re-architecting the GPU
So,
to put data close to where it's
3/3
needed,
of those rumors
to
and speculation of
optimize
what
the
the
GPU
specs
for
are
performance,
have been
and to
wrong.
add a
Stop
new,
following
more advanced
YouTubers. Start
feature
looking
set.
at Digital Foundry for
But
info
that
for
feature
that
set
stuff.
is malleable,
As you see, I don't
which is to
cover
say
that for
that
a
we have
reason.
our own
As
needs
you
for
can tell,
PlayStation,
I'm not
and
smart
that
with
can
this stuff.
factor into
I
what the
can maybe
AMD
grasp
roadmap
certain
becomes.
things,
So
but not all of it.
collaboration is born. If we bring concepts
still
to
a big
AMD that
dum-dum.
are felt to be widely useful,
RDNA
then they
2?
can
Great.
be adopted
I don't know what that
into
means.
RDNA 2 and used broadly,
don't
including
know.
in PC GPUs.
Sergeant Bones.
If the ideas are sufficiently specific to what we're trying to accomplish, like the GPU cache scrubbers I was talking about, then they end up being just for us. If you see a similar discrete GPU available as a PC card at roughly the same time as we release our console, that means our collaboration with AMD succeeded.
Sorry, I
In
got
producing
these 10,
technology
15 minutes.
useful in
I
both
have to
worlds.
step out, just
It doesn't mean
hold
that
down
we
the
as
fort.
Sony simply incorporated
will
the PC
do.
part into our console. This continuous improvement in AMD technology means it's dangerous to rely on teraflops as an absolute indicator of performance, and CU count should be avoided as well. In the case of CPUs, we all understand this. The PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5
like, hey,
each have 8
don't
CPUs,
forget.
but we never think that meant the capabilities and performance are equal. It's the same for CUs. For one thing, they've been getting much larger over time. Adding new features means adding lots of transistors. In fact, the transistor count for a PlayStation 5 CU is 62% larger than the transistor count for a PlayStation 4.
I played that game, Transistor.
Second,
It's pretty good.
the PlayStation 5 GPU is backwards compatible with PlayStation 4. What does that mean? One way you can achieve backwards compatibility is to put the previous
here we go.
console's chipset
Backwards
in the new
compatibility.
console, like we did with some PlayStation 3s. But that's, of course, extremely expensive. A better way is to incorporate any differences in the previous console's logic into the new console's custom chips, meaning that even as the technology evolves, the logic and feature set that PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 4 Pro titles rely on is still available in backwards compatibility modes. One advantage of this strategy is that once backwards compatibility is in the console, it's in. It's not as if a cost down will remove backwards compatibility like it did on PlayStation 3.
Cool.
Achieving this unification of functionality took years of efforts by AMD, as any roadmap advancement creates a potential divergence in logic. Running PS4 and PS4 titles at boosted frequencies has also added complexity. The boost is truly massive this time around, and some game code just can't handle it. Testing has to be done on a title-by-title basis. Results are excellent, though. We recently took a look at the top 100 PlayStation 4 titles as ranked by playtime, and we're expecting almost all of them to be playable at launch on PlayStation 5.
Cool.
With regards to new features, as I said, our strategy was to try to break new ground, but at the same time not to require use of the new GPU capabilities. For more than a decade, GPUs have imposed a restriction on game engines. Software handles vertex processing, but for the most part, dedicated hardware is responsible for the triangles and other geometry that the vertices form. That means it's not possible to do even basic optimizations, such as aborting processing of a vertex if all geometry that uses it is off-screen. PlayStation 5 has a new unit called the Geometry Engine, which brings handling of triangles and other primitives under full programmatic control. As a game developer, you're free to ignore its existence and use the PlayStation 5 GPU as if it were no more capable than the PS4 GPU, or you can use this new intelligence in various ways. Simple usage could be performance optimization, such as removing back-faced or off-screen vertices and triangles. More complex usage involves something called primitive shaders, which allow the game to synthesize geometry on the fly as it's being rendered. It's a brand new capability. Using primitive shaders on PlayStation 5 will allow for a broad variety of techniques, including smoothly varying level of detail, addition of procedural detail to close-up objects, and improvements
I still expect like the screen to break and shatter, like, welcome to the state of play.
Another major new feature of our custom RDNA 2-based GPU is ray tracing, using the same strategy as AMD's upcoming PC GPUs. The CUs contain a new specialized unit called the intersection engine, which can calculate the intersection of rays with boxes and triangles. To use the intersection engine, first you build what is called an acceleration structure. It's data in RAM that contains all of your geometry. There's a specific set of formats you can use. They're variations on the same BVH concept. Then, in your shader program, you use a new instruction that asks the intersection engine to check a ray against the BVH. While the intersection engine is processing the requested ray triangle or ray box intersections, the shaders are free to do other work. Having said that, the ray tracing instruction is pretty memory intensive, so it's a good mix with logic-heavy code.
Fiona said it in
There's of
chat
course no
earlier.
need to use
like
ray tracing. PS4 graphics engines will run just fine.
And I am not take a quiz.
But it presents
and I
an
am not
opportunity
ready.
for those interested. I'm thinking it'll take less than 1 million rays a second to have a big impact on audio. That should be enough for audio occlusion and some reverb calculations. With a bit more of the GPU invested in ray tracing, it should be possible to do some very nice
Jason Schreier said,
global
expect a dry
illumination.
conference.
Having said that,
He was
adding
not
ray
kidding,
traced
man.
shadows
Like,
and
this
reflections
is-
to a traditional graphics engine could easily take hundreds
man.
of millions of rays a second, and full ray tracing could take billions. How far can we go? I'm starting to get quite bullish. I've already seen a PlayStation 5 title that's successfully using ray tracing-based reflections in complex animated scenes with only modest costs. Another set of issues for the GPU involved size and frequency. How big do we make the GPU, and what frequency do we run?
What would I want?
This is
I
a
want
balancing
Bloodborne
act.
2.
The chip has a
showing
cost,
off.
and there's a cost for whatever we use
Right?
to
Like, what
supply
do I
that chip
want?
with
I want
power
Aloy
and
stepping out
security.
here.
In general,
Is this
I
a
like
GDC
running
conference?
the GPU
Yes.
at higher frequency. Let
Is
me
this
show you
something
why.
that everybody overhyped? Absolutely.
Here's 2 possible configurations for a GPU roughly of the level of the PlayStation 4 Pro. This is a thought experiment. Don't take these configurations too seriously. If you just
thought
calculate
experiments.
teraflops, you get the same number. But actually, the performance is noticeably different because teraflops is defined as the computational capability of the vector ALU. That's just one part of the GPU. There are a lot of other units. And those other units all run faster when the GPU frequency is higher. At 33%
when you have
higher
to leave it a little bit, you might come back to me
33% faster.
Yeah,
Processing
I think so.
the command buffer goes that much faster. The L2 and other caches have that much higher bandwidth, and so on. About the only downside is that system memory is 33% further away in terms of cycles. But the large number of benefits more than counterbalance that. As a friend of mine says,
there it is.
A rising
the
tide
joy and
lifts all
passion in
boats.
his face makes me
Also,
so happy.
it's easier to fully use 36 CUs in parallel than it is to fully use 48 CUs. When triangles are small, it's much harder to fill all those CUs with useful work.
Yeah,
So there's
absolutely.
a lot to be said for faster, assuming you can handle the resulting power and heat issues, which frankly, we haven't
He's saying,
always
listen,
done the
teraflop,
best
and
job
it
at.
is
Part of the reason for that
true.
is, historically,
Don't
our
measure
process
this
for
as
setting
pure
CPU and GPU frequencies has
power,
relied on some
because
heavy-duty
RDNA
guesswork
1
with
and
regards to how much
RDNA 2
electrical power games
are a
will
lot
consume
different.
and how much heat will be produced
So,
as a result
again,
What
we're
is
gonna
inside the
this
keep
console.
craft?
Power consumption varies a lot.
Axes
from game
take
to
the
game.
highest power
when I
consumption?
Play God of War on my PS4 Pro, I know
Cars
the
are
power
less?
consumption is high just by the fan noise. But power isn't simply about engine
Yo, that
quality.
Leviathan
It's
axe,
about the
man.
minutia of
High
what's being
power.
displayed and how. It's counterintuitive, but processing dense geometry typically consumes less power than processing simple geometry, which is, I suspect, why Horizon's map screen, with its low triangle count, makes my PS4 Pro heat up so much.
Sound like a jet
Our
engine.
process on previous consoles has been
Yeah.
to try to guess
Let's be
what the
real.
maximum power
please
consumption
just say
during
that
the
won't
entire
happen on
console
PS5.
lifetime might be, which is to say, the worst
I
case
can't wait where
scene
they put
in the
one
worst
out,
case
like a state
game,
of play where it's
and
in English.
prepare a
That's gonna be
cooling
fucking nuts.
solution
That's
that we
gonna be
think will be quiet at that power level. If we get it right, fan noise is minimal. If we get it wrong, the console will be quite loud for the higher power games, and there's even a chance that it might overheat and shut down if we misestimate
don't do that,
power
Mark.
too badly.
Jared Gauthier
PlayStation
says,
5 is
translation,
especially
games are gonna look
challenging
great
because the
on
CPU
Xbox and
supports
PS5 regardless of
256-bit
which one
native
has more
instructions
numbers.
that consume
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of power. These are great here and there, but presumably only minimally
I've said it on the
used.
show a bunch
Or
of times.
are they?
If
we
the
plan
games are
for
still
major
good and still look pretty,
256-bit
they look
instruction
pretty now.
usage, we need
I
to
don't-
set the CPU
I don't
clock
care how many
substantially
flops it
lower,
has.
or noticeably increase
Just
the
let me
size
play the
of the
games.
power supply
mean,
and fan.
I don't want to sound like a Sony
So,
apologist right now.
after
It's
much
not
discussion,
great.
we decided
But,
to go with a
yeah,
very
like when I
different
take a look at like
direction
Ghost of
on PlayStation
Tsushima,
5.
it looks to me.
We built a GPU
To
with
me, my
36
opinion, anybody
CUs. Mind you,
see me being
RDNA 2
aggravated,
CUs
looks
are
better than
large. Each has
most of the
62%
things
more
I've seen on
transistors than the
Xbox One.
CUs we were using on
I own an
PlayStation
Xbox
4.
One X.
So if we compare transistor counts, 36 RDNA 2 CUs equates to roughly 58 PlayStation 4 CUs.
Oh, shit.
It is a fairly
those
sizable
CUs,
GPU.
man. Colorado
Then
University.
we went with a
I'll
variable
allow that,
frequency
Chris.
strategy for PlayStation
Sergeant
5,
Bones, like,
which
show
is
us
to
the
say
fucking
we
box.
continuously
Yo, I'm
run
with
the
that one.
GPU and CPU in boost mode. We supply a generous amount of electrical power and then increase the frequency of GPU and CPU until they reach the capabilities of the system's cooling solution. It's a completely different paradigm. Rather than running at constant frequency and letting power vary based on the workload, we run at essentially constant power and let the frequency vary based on the workload.
Oh man, it's nuts.
We then tackled the engineering challenge of a
Yeah, that
cost-effective and
wavelength
high-performance
going into, like,
cooling
flashing
solution
lights.
designed for
Woo!
that specific power level. In some ways, it becomes a simpler problem because there are no more unknowns. There's no need to guess what power consumption the worst-case game might have. As for the details of the cooling solution, we're saving them for our teardown. I think you'll be quite happy with what the engineering team came
Saving
up
it
do
for
with.
the
that, Sergeant
teardown.
Bones.
What does that mean?
So how fast can we run the GPU and CPU with this strategy? The simplest
don't know,
approach
man.
would be
Tell
to
me.
look at the actual temperature of the
tell me
silicon
what's
die
it.
and throttle the frequency on that basis. But that won't work.
Oh,
It fails
my
to
brother's
create
here.
a
Keep the
consistent
force.
Okay.
PlayStation 5 experience.
Got it.
It wouldn't do to run a console slower simply
All right,
because
chat.
it was
When
in
Joe
a hot
comes
room.
back,
So rather than
Bloodborne
look
2
at
was
the
shown
actual
off.
temperature of the silicon die, we look at the activities that the GPU and CPU are performing and set the frequencies
all
on that
Bloodborne
basis,
2.
which makes
They're
everything
showing
deterministic and
increased load
repeatable.
times and ray tracing in
While we're
Bloodborne
at
2.
it, we also use AMD's Smart Shift technology and send any unused power from the CPU to the GPU so it can squeeze out a few more pixels.
Squeeze all those
Benefits
pixels.
of this strategy are quite large. Running a GPU at 2 gigahertz was looking like an unreachable target with the old fixed frequency strategy. With this new paradigm, we're able to run way over that. In fact, we have to cap the GPU frequency at 2.23 gigahertz so that we can guarantee that the on-chip logic operates properly. 36 CUs at 2.23 gigahertz is 10.3 teraflops. And we expect the GPU to spend most of its time at or close to that frequency and performance. Similarly, running the CPU at 3 gigahertz was causing headaches with the old strategy. But now we can run it as high as 3.5 gigahertz. In fact, it spends most of its time at that frequency. That doesn't mean all games will be running at 2.23 gigahertz and 3.5 gigahertz. When that worst-case game arrives, it will run at a lower clock speed, but not too much lower. To reduce power by 10%, it only takes a couple of percent reduction in frequency, so I'd expect any downclocking to be pretty minor. All things considered, the change to a variable frequency approach will show significant gains for PlayStation gamers. The final of our 3 principles was about finding new dreams. It's important for us on the hardware team to find new ways to expand or deepen gaming, and that's what led us to a focus on 3D audio. As players, we experience the game through the visuals, through audio, and through the feedback we receive from the controller, such as rumble or haptics. Personally, I feel a game is just dead without audio. Visuals
so
are,
Luke Lore says Sony had to know lots of eyes
audio
would be here.
Is huge
they didn't think this would fall flat with
At the same time, the audio team on a game project has to do a lot with a little. For example, on PlayStation 4,
I get what you're
fierce
saying.
competition for the
like Joe was
CPU
saying,
cores.
and like
audio
I agree with
typically
him.
ends up
This
getting
is
just a
for
fraction
GDC.
of a core.
It is for developers.
That's not much of a computational resource.
They have a real bad way
when you
of
consider that the visuals run at 30 or 60 frames a second,
will be.
but audio processing needs to happen at almost 200
Again, that
times
could fall on our end where we were hyped up
it's
too
been
much.
tough
like,
going making forward progress on
said
audio
the
with
future
PlayStation 4,
is here,
particularly
PS5,
when
and
PlayStation
this is
3 was
all
such a
very
beast when it came to audio.
heavy-handed.
The SPUs in Cell were almost a perfect device for audio rendering. Simple pipeline
All tech,
algorithms
no
could
pizzazz
really
is
take
Mark
advantage
Cerny's
of
motto.
asynchronous DMA and frequently reached 100% utilization of the
That's
floating
his,
point unit.
his calling card.
There's unfortunately nothing comparable on PlayStation 4. Probably the most dramatic progress in the PlayStation 4 generation has been with virtual reality. The PSVR hardware has its own audio.
Show the box,
it supports about 50 pretty decent 3D
one
sound
game.
sources. And this provided a hint as to where
forgotten.
we could go with audio, as well as some valuable experience. Not to oversimplify, but here were our goals.
That's
for
really
audio
all
on
what we
PlayStation
want.
5.
We just want to
The first goal
see the
was
box
great audio
and
for
see
everyone,
a game
not just VR users or
on
soundbar
PS5.
owners or headphone users. That meant audio had to be part of the
Which
console.
is what the only one we saw was Godfall.
The second goal was to support hundreds of sound sources.
Else.
We didn't want developers to have to pick and choose what sounds would get 3D effects and which wouldn't. We wanted every sound in the game to have dimensionality. And finally, we wanted to really take on the challenges of presence and locality. Now, when we say presence, we mean the feeling that you're actually there. You've entered the matrix. It's not, of course, something we thought we could perfectly achieve, but the idea was that if we stopped using just a rain sound and instead used lots of 3D audio sources for raindrops hitting the ground at all sorts of locations
really
around
couldn't
you,
tell me how
then at
rain
some
sounds?
point your brain would
Is that
take
where
a
we're
leap
at right now?
and you'd begin to have this feeling of real presence inside the virtual world of the game. This has the capacity to affect your appreciation of the game, just like music in a game does. The concept of locality is simpler. It's just your sense of where the audio is coming from, to the right of you, behind you, above you. This can immerse you further in the game, and it can also directly enhance the gameplay. To use Dead Space as an example, I know, old school, you're fighting enemies in fairly dark, spooky locations.
Dead Space 4
Back in the
was
day,
showed
if
off
you played the game
when Joe
using the
comes back.
TV speakers, you could tell that there was one last enemy growling and hunting you down, but it was difficult to tell quite where that enemy was. With headphones, you could tell that the enemy was somewhere on the right, which let you deduce, if you couldn't see it, that it must be somewhere behind and to your right. But with 3D audio with good locality, the idea is you know the enemy is precisely there.
God, I really
and
wish
you
Joe
turn,
would just come
and
back
you
right
take
now
it
and
out.
just see Isaac Clarke on the screen
So,
and
how do we
freak out.
know where a sound is coming from in the first place? Well, all those bumps and folds in the ear have a meaning, evolutionarily speaking. Based on what direction the sound is coming from, sound waves bounce around inside the ear, there's some constructive and destructive interference, and the result is a change in volume. The phase of the sound also shifts, depending on what path the sound wave took to reach the ear canal. These volume changes and phase shifts are different for each direction and also vary depending on the frequency of the sound. Head size and head shape also impact the sound in a similar fashion. The way that the sound changes
10 more minutes,
based on
chat.
direction and frequency can be encoded in a table called the head-related transfer function, or HRTF. Here's part of one. The vertical axis is the frequency. The horizontal axis is the direction, front, back, left, right, and the color gives the degree of attenuation of the sound at that frequency. The HRTF is as unique to an individual as a fingerprint is. In fact, you're looking at mine right now. Here's how we measure an HRTF. We've taken hundreds of people through this process. We put a microphone in the subject's left and right ear canals, and then sit the subject down in the middle of an array of 22 speakers. We then play an audio sweep from each speaker as we rotate the
See you later, Sergeant Bro.
In the course of 10 or 20 minutes, we're able to sample the HRTF
that looks
at over
so
1,000
uncomfortable,
locations.
the way Sid is sitting.
Using an HRTF when rendering audio creates unparalleled quality, but it's computationally expensive. The simplest way to use an HRTF is to process a sound source to make it appear as if it's coming from one of those 1,000 locations we sampled.
And open it up
Unfortunately,
and ruin it
the
just
processing
to see
has to be done in frequency domain rather than tone domain. So there's multiple fast Fourier transforms needed for every sound source, for every audio tape. That's a lot of multiplies. This computational complexity was the determining factor for our strategy. It meant we had to bite the bullet and design and build a custom hardware unit for 3D audio. Collectively, we're referring to the hardware unit and the proprietary algorithms we run on it as Tempest 3D Audio Tech. The meaning of 3D audio and technology should be pretty obvious here. As for Tempest, I feel it really reflects our goals with audio. It suggests a certain intensity of experience and also hints at your presence within it. We're calling the hardware unit that we built the Tempest engine. It's based on AMD's GPU technology. We modified a compute unit in such a way as to make it very close to SPUs in PlayStation 3. Remember when I said that they were ideal for audio?
And I quote,
so the Tempest
if you people
engine
wasn't
has no
so dumb,
caches,
you would
like
know what the SSD
All
makes the
data
PS5
access is via DMA,
of.
just like an SPU.
Okay.
Our target was that it would have more power than a CPU, thanks to the parallelism that a GPU can achieve, and that it would be more efficient than our GPU, thanks to
Somebody's saying, well, I'll be getting Xbox.
The goal being to make possible near 100% utilization of the CU's vector units. Where we ended up is a unit with roughly the same SIMD power and bandwidth as all 8 Jaguar cores in the PlayStation 4 combined. If we were to use the same algorithms as PSVR, that's enough for something like 5,000 sound sources. But of course, we want to use more complex algorithms, and we don't need anything like that number of sounds.
Oh,
it would have been wonderful to have a simpler strategy, such as using Dolby Atmos peripherals to have achieved our goals. But we wanted 3D audio for all, not just those with licensed soundbars or the like. Also, we wanted many hundreds of sound sources, not just the 32 that Atmos supports. And finally, we wanted to be able to throw
I feel like the chat's going with it.
Problem. And it wasn't clear
wow, Dead Space 4.
Chat, I love you so much, man. Thank you for... For real though, Joe, they brought up Dead Space to talk about 3D audio. And so it popped up, and he was explaining how that worked really well and how it.
But the primary purpose of the Tempest engine remains 3D audio.
Yeah.
Now,
but you know what? I don't need to hear him explain it.
Academic research it's safe to say that no one in the world has all of the answers. And the set of algorithms that have to be invented, tuned, or implemented to realize our vision for 3D audio is immense. For example, use of HRTFs in games is quite complex. Before, I talked about making a sound source appear as if it's coming from one of those 1,000 HRTF sample locations. But for high-quality 3D
diagrams. This is nuts, guys.
The sound source might not be at one of the 1,000 HRTF locations, so we have to blend
there's two B's
HRTF
there.
data from the closest locations that we have sound.
What?
The sound source might be moving,
I don't even
which
know what that means.
very special handling as that blend keeps changing, and that can cause phase
Jedi
artifacts
fighter
in the
battle up there in the
audio.
top left.
Or the sound source
So
might have a
let's talk.
size to it, meaning
Shout
it
out
should
to
feel
the
as if it's
original
coming from an
co-host
area
MJ here.
rather than a
I
single
get
sound.
why the sound bit.
There's
and
also
3D
whole
audio
categories
is
of
important.
approaches to be
Strenuous
handled.
sacrifice
3D
utilize
audio
3D
can be
audio
implemented
to
using
make
individual
games
processing
really,
of 3D sound
make the
sources.
game really, really
But
potent.
alternatively,
but the only really
ambisonics
work
can be used for 3D
on
audio.
headphones.
Ambisonics
It'll be
being
sick
somewhat like
in
the
Dead Space
spherical
4.
harmonics used in
That
computer
is
graphics.
my whole thing when
And
I'm
finally, there's audio
listening
devices.
to this.
The player might be
I
using
don't
headphones
game
or
with
TV
headphones.
speakers or
I
have a
game
higher
listening
end
to
surround
the sound
sound set
coming
up
through
with
the
6
TV,
or
so
more speakers.
I don't
all
see
of
how
which
it
need
will
different
affect me
approaches.
at all.
That's
Did they
a lot
even
of
mention
variations.
how many
It's nice
teraflops
to
they
have
have?
the computational resources.
There
of the
was a
Tempest
moment where it
engine,
said 10.3
but it's clear
teraflop.
that achieving our
Okay,
But I don't know if
goals
that's a
with 3D audio is going to be a
confirmation
multi-year
or
step-by-step
10.3.
process.
It's negligible. That's
Having
the
said
amount
that,
of,
headphone audio implementation is
differentiation
largely
between the
complete at this
PS4
time.
Pro and the
It was a
Xbox
natural
Series
place
X
for us to start.
Not
With
mistaken, it was
headphones, we
around.
control exactly what each ear hears, and therefore
What is
the
the
algorithmic
Series X
development
at?
and implementation are more straightforward.
Teraflop wise?
For
Sweet.
TV
I'm going to
speakers
put
and
this
stereo
on my
speakers, we're
TV
in the
so my
process
kids
of
can go to
implementing
sleep
virtual
too.
surround sound. The idea being that if you're sitting in a
Ow,
sweet
that
spot in
hurts
front
so
of the
much, but it
TV,
hurts
then
so
the sound
good,
can be
Tim.
made to feel as if it's coming from any direction, even behind you. Virtual surround sound has a lot in common
All right,
with
so I
3D
guess
audio
this is
on
him
headphones,
speaking
but
to me
it's more
using TV
complex
speakers.
because the left ear can hear
But how
the
much
right
was Series
speaker
X
and vice
teraflops?
versa.
12.
We have a basic
not
implementation
that
of
bad.
virtual
It's
surround
really
sound
not.
up and
It's
running. We're now
negligible.
looking at increasing the size
It's gonna
of that
be a
sweet
little bit
spot,
more
which is to
powerful.
say,
And
making
how,
the area you need to be in to
Tim's,
feel the 3D effect
fuck you,
larger.
Kyle.
And we're
How
also
Mark
working to
Cerny
boost the sense
stated
of
it.
locality.
Was kind
Headphone
of like how
audio
Xbox.
is the current gold standard
I'm not
for
saying
3D
they
audio on
misled,
PlayStation
but they
5,
were like,
but we're going to see
it's
what we
12
can do to bring
teraflops, but it's
virtual
actually more like
surround sound to
24.
a similar
What
level,
Tim-
after which we'll start in on setups with more
Well, Mark,
speakers, such as
I
6
don't know
channel
why it's
surround
getting
sound.
me so bad.
It's
Maybe
now
it's
to the
Tim
point
Olsen
where
in
some
chat,
of
I
the
don't know.
PlayStation 5 games in
But yeah,
development are
the
extensively
teraflops are
using these
negligible,
systems.
and that
One of
it's
the
gonna
game
be
demos
twice as
allows you to
powerful as a
toggle
normal
between
teraflop.
conventional
Oh, that's
PlayStation 4
fascinating.
style stereo audio and our new 3D audio. I listened with just an ordinary pair of over-the-ear headphones, and wow,
I wish.
I could feel it.
I really do wish.
3D audio has that
This is a rough
dimensional
presentation
feel to it.
because
conventional stereo audio
It's
feels
not meant
smashed
for
flat
us,
by
but I think this is a
comparison.
misstep
The
in
improvement
Sony's
is
plan
obvious.
to roll out the
So,
PS5.
a big
because
advancement, but
I would have liked
have I
it.
entered
I would
the
have liked it
matrix?
in
Does my
layman's
brain
terms
believe
first,
I'm really there?
and then
like I
a
was
state of
talking
play,
about
like
earlier
here's what
when
it
I
is,
explained our
and then
target
Tim
of
Cerny
presence.
talking
Well,
to the
the
GDC
answer
crowd.
is no.
That's what
but you've
Xbox has
probably
nailed
caught
so
on to what's
far.
missing
Was
here,
they gave you a
namely
video for
whose
both for the
HRTF
people that
was
want
being
the
used.
in-depth shit.
It wasn't
you get
mine. It
Digital
was the
Found G,
default
then for the
HRTF.
casuals, you get
The audio
Austin
team
Evans.
analyzed the hundreds that they measured and chose
which
the
he's
one they
oddly
felt was the
attractive. Can we
closest
say it?
fit to
Like,
the
he's
total
oddly
game
built.
playing audience.
He looks like a
This
nerd.
shows
He's got a
a
nerdy
piece of the
face, but like
default
he's
HRTF on
is
the
it
left,
kinda jacked?
and my
Yeah.
HRTF
I don't know who
on the
you're
right.
talking about.
You can see that the
Oh, you don't know
general
who Austin
features are
Evans
much the
is?
same,
I
but
don't
the
think so,
details
no.
are quite different. With the default HRTF, as I said, the 3D audio sound.
Yeah, no,
another-
Lucas.
When I use
Laura,
my
I
HRTF,
agree
though,
with
the
you,
audio
buddy.
reaches a higher
This won't
level.
be
I
on
was
the
also
feed.
I was
Which is
also
to
going
say
to
that
stress
when
that
using
once we were
headphones
done.
This
in
is,
my HRTF,
yeah.
I
when
occasionally
it's a
get
state of
fooled
play
and
for
even
sure,
think
but
a
not
sound
this
is
is,
coming from the
comment
real
from the
world when it's
YouTube,
actually coming
chat.
from the game.
This isn't a PS5 unveiling. It's a tech review. Go
Corollary
watch
to
some
this
Minecraft
is that there are
videos if
few
you're bored.
people whose HRTFs
go.
are
I don't know
sufficiently
if that's good
far
advice.
from the default HRTF, that's the red dot here, that they can toggle
Red
between
outliers.
PS4 style and
Wait,
PS5
Cerny's
style
his own
audio
dot?
and not sense much
Hold on now.
difference. I've had
Things
a
just
few
got
people
interesting.
describe the PlayStation 5's 3D
Cerny's the
audio
blue
as
dot.
sounding like a bit
Default
better
is the red dot.
stereo audio. Presumably, they're the ones at the very edges of this diagram. Which means what HRTF you're using is key. I'd like everyone to be able to experience what I'm experiencing, but obviously it's not possible to measure the HRTF of every PlayStation user. That means HRTF selection and synthesis are going to be big topics going forward as the Tempest technology matures. At PlayStation 5 launch, we'll be offering a choice of 5 HRTFs. There's a simple test where you pick the one that gives you the best locality. That's just the first step, though. This is an open-ended research topic. Maybe you'll be sending us a photo of your ear, and we'll choose a neural network to pick the closest
I'm not sending you a
HRTF
picture of my
from our
ear,
library.
Mark.
Maybe you'll be sending us a video of your ears and your head, and we'll make a 3D model of them and synthesize the HRTL.
Mark, what the fuck are you talking about collecting my ears, dude?
Tune your HRTL.
What?
We'll be subtly changing it as you
We
play.
are not freakers from Days Gone.
Don't
take my ears.
Give me your face.
Meaning that it matches you the best.
That is
This is a journey we'll all be taking together over the next few years. Ultimately, we're committing to enabling everyone to experience that next level of realism.
What?
Maybe you'll send us
Hopefully,
videos.
I've
Get
been able
my
to
ears
illustrate
out of
a bit
this.
about our design and decision-making process today, and why PlayStation 5
New
has the feature set
OnlyFans
that it does.
craze right
Now
now.
comes the fun part.
Send
we
me
get to
your
see
ears,
how the
ear pics.
development community takes advantage of that feature set.
We're gonna see a game.
I'm hoping for the completely
see a
unexpected.
game.
Will it come from audio, ray tracing,
he just say we're seeing
the
a game?
capabilities of the
Madman
SSD,
ideas.
or
Send
something
me
else?
your-
I guess we'll find out soon enough.
This is gonna be a meme.
Thank you for your time today.
God, sorry.
Did you say he said he was? We're
Yeah,
gonna see
we're
a game?
gonna. Yeah,
You sure?
yeah. He's like, here's the fun part.
Here's the fun part.
Okay, where
It's a
where
black
is it?
screen.
Is it over?
Yeah, it's over.
Oh God. Well, now we got the Iron Lords. God bless them.
And see, for me, it went to us. So right now, we're
that's,
on my screen.
Whoops. Sorry. Things are going a little crazy here. Things are going a little crazy. Wow, that was an event, Kyle. My dog, rave reviews, and my Dropbox information there. Wow.
Wow, indeed.
Wow, that didn't need to happen. Okay.
Nope.
Let's be real. My expectations were, you're lucky if we see a game.
Mm-hmm.
This is GDC.
Mm-hmm.
It's meant for developers. We're going to get a lot of developer speak.
Mm-hmm.
That is exactly what we got today.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did a lot of the information fly over my head? Yes. And was it a lot of it 100% unneeded? Yeah. Like this could have been 25 minutes easy. Kyle, your thoughts?
So many right now. Like, will I ever get that 52 minutes back? No, but for real, like I kind of had this expectation going in.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to see the box, even though I knew that was unrealistic. I wanted to see some games. We didn't see any of those. But you know what? Seems to be Sony's MO lately. They had another one of these things when they talked about the loading times, right?
Yeah.
They're like, here's a little conference we're talking about the next generation. And it was very dry, just like this.
Yeah.
When PS4 Pro was unveiled, it was a dry conference just like this.
Yeah.
So like they have a history of doing this. I just wish we got back to that PS4 reveal event. Like that would have been so much better. Maybe even just having this, maybe not go live. Like, yeah, you can send this to developers, but give us a more consumer friendly version of this talk.
And I do think that's weeks away.
Yeah.
And I think it has to be weeks away. This was not a good first step into the PlayStation 5. Sony has to start understanding that like there's 100 million plus theoretical users out there who are excited about the next generation. This is not how you start that.
No.
With a like and look, I appreciate it because if we could be Aretha Franklin here about it, they did go into the weeds a lot more than what Xbox did from what I saw. Like he's breaking down, okay, here's how your hard drives are going to work, right? Like here's how, teraflops work. Here's how the IO works and whatnot. And that's really awesome. And that's what I want. But I also want it to be broken down in English for a little bit more excitement. And yeah, for the layman like us to understand, we got none of that here.
Yeah.
We got absolutely none of that here. Again,
we got a couple little news bite things out of this.
Yeah.
But like they were few and far between.
And so, again, original co-host, she writes in, Ren, she goes, I think he did a pretty solid job breaking down the complex dev tech speak in a basic, sorry, I'm really far away, I kind of get it way. But Sony has been botching marketing for years. Yeah, and I think this is a botch, and I think you're 100% right. This is not a good look.
Mm-hmm.
And now, am I worried about the PlayStation 5? No. Still not. They got months to kind of course correct here, but not a good first impression. That's all I gotta say.
Sure.
So yeah, this won't be up in the trophy room feeds because don't think it's worth it. But we will be recording, and I kind of want to break this one down as well. Tonight we will be recording the breakdown. So we'll get it in English. We will talk about the specs. Benji Sales is going to be with us. We're going to talk about how the situation that's happening globally, because we can't say the name on YouTube, but it's is affecting video game sales and how it may affect the next generation. I'm super excited for that episode. Benji Sales, if you don't know him, follow him on Twitter. He's an amazing voice in games, and I can't wait to get that out. Kyle, you may or may not be there because I know you're not feeling good. Don't worry. Yeah. He's not down with the sickness. He's just down with a cold. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. Also, the package just came downstairs. Cyberpunk 2077 limited edition.
Hell yeah.
RTX 2080 Ti. We're going to do an unboxing. Don't know. I'm just going to wing it. It's going to be fun. It's going to be cool. Expect that sometime this week, maybe tomorrow. Also, we're naming this the Bad Bit Stimulus Package for everybody that supports us on Patreon. What we're going to do, starting sometime tonight, I'll drop a link when it happens. All of our past projects are just free for everyone, and this month's as well, to kind of, I know we're all coping with what's going on in the world, down with the sickness. So this is just a way for us to say thank you for supporting us, and thank you for continuing to support us as well, because trust me, that money is definitely needed right now. It's desperately needed. So thank you all so much for your generosity. Again, patreon.com/badbit, where you'll be able to get all of that for free. And we'll think about what we do in April as well. But again, I'll put out a link on the Casa de Bad Bit Discord server, which links I do believe are somewhere down below. No, they're not, because it's old description because YouTube's bad. So yeah, we'll put that out there on Twitter after this. But again, Benji Sales tonight we're recording. So if you have any questions, please go to the Bad Bit Discord server. Tweet us your questions at PS Trophy Room. The latest tweet, it's there. Tweet us your questions. Go to Mr. Badbit. Tweet us your questions and thoughts of what was, I think, a terrible way to start the PlayStation 5. Not a good look. Not a good look. With that said, and I don't know where my mouse is anymore. Kyle, any last thoughts, sir?
No. Just thanks for everyone for spending the last hour with us in the chat. Thanks for coming in at the last second there, Sean Capri. It was a great time, and anytime I get to hang out with you
and the audience like this, it's crazy.
Laugh at Tim Cerny, it's fantastic.
I want to collect your ears, your face.
Real talk.
I would like to.
What was that all about?
If I can just send a picture of your ears, it won't be sexual, but Daddy would like it.
What if Knack 3 is just Knack made up of everyone's ears instead of the little bits, the relics that he collects?
This is a monument to your sins. Oh, God damn it. Everyone, thank you all for hanging in there with us. Again, it's been a gosh dang treat, even though this was definitely a conference. It definitely happened.
Yeah, it happened.
I'll be on Boomstick's show, and we're going to talk about it, because this is... Fuck. Everybody, with all that said, with all that out of the way, keep hunting and keep playing PlayStation. Don't send Mark Cerny your ears.